This is Talk the Devils, the athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up today, Manchester United go marching down to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday lunchtime. We'll preview that game. The progress feels real. We've seen the stats now to prove it after 10 matches, but how would the club cope with Thomas Frank's low block and a strange atmosphere around home games down in North London as well? We've also got updates on a hectic fortnight for Talk the Devils, with Andy Mitten picking up concert tickets, Moroccan hotel rooms, and much more in between. Everyone's here again. We've got a good run at the minute of everyone being on the show. So good morning, Laurie, Andy and Carl. We all right?
Morning.
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can't wait for a trip down to London. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I am.
I've still not been to that stadium, actually.
It's brilliant. That is curious.
It is really good. And the canteen's pretty good too. Not to go
Andy
into that.
I heard
obviously
the media
has gone
food was
multiple
good,
times.
Yeah.
When are you there for the breaking of the ground at that one, Andy?
I'm actually, tomorrow, I'm going for Camp Now's opening on my jack.
Okay.
Is it finally opening?
Finally?
They're having a training session and they're letting 25,000 in. So I need no excuse to go there.
Yeah.
Go on, Andy, sorry.
That's it. I'm going there, and then I'm going to Tottenham, and then I'm going to Southend, and then I'm going to City, Liverpool, and then we're doing stuck with you lads for a few days doing live shows.
Life's all about variety. And speaking of variety, we've had lots of weird and wonderful things and people getting in touch about different matters that have been on the podcast across the last week or so. We hope you enjoyed that Q&A mailbag episode on Wednesday. It was audio only, so if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, go and have a look at your podcast feed. And there's a bonus podcast in there, Talk to Devils Extra, which we released on Wednesday. But we've had lots of questions, lots of reaction, lots of people getting in touch about Andy's trip to Fez. One listener in particular, who we can only hope is actually the owner of a hotel business, because he's invited Andy along. So I hope you don't get there and they've got no idea what you're talking about. But yeah, I love that Andy, maybe Carl, some of you are going to Fez for AFCON. I have a nice place there. If you want to stay, it'd be my pleasure. No charge. I'm going to be at Walthamstow on Tuesday with my mate Matt, if you want to say hello and make sure I'm not a nutter. Cheers, Andy. Amazing.
Nice one. I'll do it then. I'll book a flight to Fez later on. I thought Fez was like a town. It's a city of 1.3 million. I've started properly researching it now.
1.3 million?
It's big. It's big. Big gaff. Just a little bit worried at coming out the stadium, going back to this hotel. But yeah, we can sort something out. So let's have a chat in Walthamstow.
He's got the wrong way
local
around.
Knowledge.
Andy's the nutter. He needs to suss Andy out to make sure he's allowable.
You actually want him to stay at your hotel.
Premises, yeah.
You can vouch for him, Laurie, can't you, surely?
Maybe.
Okay. We've had a message on Reddit as well, Andy, also going your way. This is from SpareAd5615, who I presume is not a bot, despite the name. I'm only a few minutes in, and the revelation that Andy Mitten managed to get Radiohead tickets has already blown my mind. Everyone I know tried to get them, including myself, and we all missed out in the electronic lottery. Andy is one of a chosen few, although I wouldn't put it past him to know the band's manager or something like that, and I've got a ticket that way. I hope you enjoyed the gig, Andy. I am not, in capital letters, bitter.
The gig was incredible. It was the first gig for 8 years. I also got rejected for a ticket, and I told people, and a lad from Manchester, Noel Morley, when I got successful in the ballot, no one else I know did. And he said to me, "You've helped me enough times over the years. I've got you a ticket." And I have helped him enough times over the years.
Class.
So face value, appreciated it.
I don't think we were disputing that, Andy. I think we were taking that at face value.
So got there outside. There's a lot of United fans there. Because United are not playing in Europe, people can do stuff like this. And
United not in Europe, Andy?
Are people finding things to do because United aren't in Europe?
Yeah.
Someone should have mentioned it.
So I met 4 people, United fans, listen to this podcast. They're all sound. And I'm like, how have you got your tickets then? Because we were really hard to get hold of. And one of them just went, guest list. We went to university in Manchester with Ed. I'm like, all right. Mine was face value. We used to go and watch them when there were 15 people there and they were desperate for people to come and watch them.
Wow.
Nice one. Enjoyed the gig. So I just went and bought
was actually
2
good
massive beers and enjoyed it. Brilliant. If you're lucky enough to get tickets, they are superb. And I think Ed O'Brien, he's a United fan.
He started following me on Instagram, Andy.
Yeah.
Do you remember when so this is a bit of background for the live shows, but Andy in Dublin, I think it was Dublin. There was a busker, wasn't there? And he was playing a Radiohead song, and we're walking one way, and Andy just turns around and opens his arms and starts walking towards his busker and says, "I'm just going to enjoy this for the next sort of 2 or 3 minutes." And so his love of Radiohead does travel with him. And then I saw that Ed O'Brien started following me, so I was like, maybe I could get tickets to this thing if I give him a DM.
You should go. I said to my wife said it's music to put you to sleep, and I replied and said it's for people on a higher intellectual plane, and she blanked me for a week. So there you go.
Any excuse. Speaking of live shows, we are going to be in Manchester and London next week. There are still an ever decreasing, this is the way I'm putting it these days, handful of tickets left for London. Very, very few now, to be fair, but there are still a few left. So if you're interested in coming down on Tuesday night to Soho Theatre in Walthamstow for Talk of the Devils Live, the details of how to get tickets are in the show description. And I mean, you can have to go some way to beat Bill. Bill, this is absolutely incredible. I cannot wait for the Manchester live show. I'm making my way over from Southern California. Andy may remember me as I wrote an article for him last year. I was born in Newton Heath, left age 8, and have been in the States for over 50 years. Consequently, I use words like mither and natter, but with a Californian surfer's accent. It's going to be mint, dude. There's the mix, Bill, in that last answer, yeah. Manchester's sold out, but Billy's coming all the way from Southern California. That is incredible. Do you remember him, Andy?
Yeah, I do. He's a nice lad. I've met him a few times. I met him in America, met him outside Old Trafford. And I love it that he's from Newton Heath, which is like the most United, where United started out, didn't it? And,
cut him and he bleeds green and gold.
Yeah, the Mancunian diaspora. So fantastic that we better be on form then, aren't we, and do a good show and tell people stuff they don't know.
I'm presuming Bill is coming for numerous reasons than just the live show, but it's absolutely incredible that you're coming all that way and you're going to come and spend some of your time with us on Monday night. We're looking forward to seeing everyone in Manchester and in London, and thank you again to all of you who've bought tickets. We've got some cocktails planned, actually. There's been emails going back and forth for New Century in Manchester, so watch this space on that one. Anyway, another interesting media moment that didn't involve live shows, cocktails, Moroccan hotel rooms, Radiohead gigs, or anything else, was Jonny Evans appearing on Monday Night Football. He is still a Manchester United employee, of course, not a player anymore. He's the club's loans and pathways manager, and he was on there discussing Ruben Amorim's system, talking about Manchester United's form, obviously his brilliant career as well after calling time on his playing career in the summer. We had a few comments about it, Laurie. It raised our eyebrows, to be honest, to see him on there as well. This is from Shane. Just wondering if any of you think it's a bit strange seeing Jonny Evans on Monday Night Football discussing Amorim's coaching and system. As a United fan, I find it utterly bizarre that the club would allow Evans to do this, as he's a current employer, or employee, that should be. So what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't go that strong. I mean, listen, I'm all for people talking, right? I'm a biased journalist. I've got a bias because I'm a journalist. Hopefully not a biased journalist. But the comments might suggest otherwise. But the people speaking is a good thing, right? So we, for example, got half an hour with Bruno Fernandes to mark his 300th game at Manchester United, and he spoke very detailed about the Saudi Arabian possibility for him, the offer from them, which, to a level of detail that you're thinking, okay, I mean, we love that you're talking like this. It's obviously a lot more than what we would usually get in terms of a transfer negotiation. But, I think he then came out of it in a way that people respected and could understand where he was coming from and appreciated his candour. So I would always advocate that. I think also there's a Lenny Yoro interview that should be coming out at some point soon that United have put up for people. So this is beyond their contractual obligations. The broadcasters obviously have to get players every week, but United seem to be wanting to have people speak a bit more. We'll probably get onto Jason Wilcox, director of football, doing the Inside United podcast as well this week. So I accept that this is a bit different because you're kind of in this format on Monday Night Football. The eyes of the nation, I suppose, are on you, and it's a very technical, tactical discussion that you're having. And there's probably areas that Jonny probably doesn't feel comfortable being honest about completely, because he's still a Manchester United employee, and I suppose you're always going to have to sort of a little bit just mark yourself a little bit, kind of check what you can say and be honest to a degree, but you're not going to give absolutely everything to a Monday Night Football programme. That being said, I thought he actually did speak pretty well and sort of went into some of the details from his point of view as a player. I'd forgotten that he actually started Ruben Amorim's first match in charge, at Ipswich. So, and you saw there that he was, pressing really high up the pitch in that kind of aggressive back three mode, which is obviously what Amorim ultimately wants his defenders to do.
Nice I thought he moment, wasn't it, where he was talking about keep looking over to Ruben Amorim on the sidelines. This is a player who's, vastly experienced, won Premier League titles, FA Cups, 100 caps for Northern Ireland, whatever it ended up being. And he's sort of in one of his final games, actually, in his final sort of year as a player, he's checking to the manager, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Which shows how much of a difference it is for the players, I guess.
There's that as well. And I think also it shows sort of Evans' character as a person, wants to understand what he's being asked to do, and be professional on that front. Jamie Carragher is an excellent interviewer because he does challenge people. He challenged me when I went on the overlap in terms of talking about United's sort of structure being in place, not that completely when they made the decision to keep Erik ten Hag, and he kind of pushed back and said surely they were in place enough to kind of make that call. And so he's good at kind of, I think, pressing people on certain points, and he certainly tried to do that with Jonny Evans in terms of asking him about the difficulties of the negative points compared to the positive points of Ruben Amorim's system. But I think Evans, I would always advocate for people to try and be open and honest in the right kind of format, and I think he was that. He was respectful, and he kind of mentioned the point about defenders. What Amorim prefers is that the central defender pushes up to give the goalkeeper a bit of space, and then you've got the back four, rather than other coaches might have their back five shuffle across, to make a back four, and the wing back pushes up. So I know little details like that I just think are interesting, right? So I can understand why people would maybe be surprised at it. From the club point of view, no issue, and Jonny wanted to do it. I think you've also got to look at his own career path, and he has, he's been a player that's done everything in the game, really. He's obviously won titles with United, he's been at different clubs, he's experienced different things, and he's now Loans and Pathways manager. But one day maybe he wants to become a coach or wants to become a sporting director, and so this kind of format allows him just to sort of show people a little bit about his intelligence and about his thinking on football. So I would never sort of kind of deny somebody the opportunity to speak publicly.
No, and Carl, he speaks well, Jonny Evans. We know that already. He's a vastly experienced player, and he'll understand what the line is, I'm sure. So it's not like United are approving someone to go in who they don't trust. He's clearly someone who has been a brilliant ambassador for Manchester United over the years, and I'm sure they had every faith that he would be able to deal with whatever questions were sent his way, negative or otherwise.
Absolutely. Jonny Evans has been a safe pair of hands and a safe pair of feet on and off the field for Manchester United for several years. I remember when he walked through the mix zone after the most recent FA Cup triumph, and loads of people going, "Oh, congratulations on your first FA Cup win." And he's like, "Well, actually, I was there at Leicester." And you're like, "Yep, this is a man who knows how to talk. He knows how to deftly correct people when they fly off the handle or assume things." And I think he gave a very good account of himself on Monday Night Football.
Andy, do we know much about the work that he's doing at Old Trafford at the minute?
Is that a sort of first post-footballer role? Told me a year ago at Palace away that he was going to retire, and I thought, you sure? What about Real Madrid, Barcelona? Because you're good enough. You could go there and be the best defender. And he was like, calm down. He is intelligent. I think it's better for Manchester United to have people working there like him than not have. Totally agree with Laurie about more voices and faces from the club having a public profile, because you had a point, especially under Ten Hag, where Manchester United, which is massive, had one voice, which was weird. And we'll speak more on Jason Wilcox, but I think if you can maybe have 4 or 5 and Jim Ratcliffe and Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox, and of course the first team manager is always going to be the main voice. What Jonny's doing is the loans role, and he can do it and speak from experience. So this was an area Darren Fletcher did. So I'll give you an example. When Ahmad went to Rangers, Fletcher would be speaking to him all the time, even though it was really difficult for him there. And he is of the opinion that there's such a thing a bad loan can be a good thing because it brings you that worth. And when Garnacho, for example, was called up for Argentina, your loans manager will speak to the Argentinian. That will be the person from Manchester United who says, what are your plans for our young player? So there's a duty of care. There's an administrative side to it as well. I didn't see him on Monday because I was in the garage making a statue of Jonathan Grant Evans. But I'm told there were no surprises. You know what my opinion of him is as a human. And if he can make a role work for him at Manchester United, then good. We need more people like that. And I don't think he's seen as one of the old guard. I think he's fresh enough and new enough into it to be embraced by the new guard because they do want their own people in, and he can be one of them people.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure it won't be the last we see of Jonny Evans then in those roles, and it might not be the last Manchester United person we see in those roles. Phil Jones, of course, has done it in the past when he's been a coach at United too. Let's talk about Spurs then, Carl. It's always one of the games I look forward to against Spurs, although the record against them, as we'll talk about, has not been brilliant in recent times. And I look forward to a game against Spurs even more when I know that Spurs are having a few issues. And I wasn't actually aware of how tricky they have found it at home so far this season until I started to prepare for this show and look ahead to the game at the weekend. Whilst the top of the Premier League away form so far this season at home, they're really struggling. They're 17th. It's only the 3 promoted sides who've taken fewer points at home. Cue Manchester United's arrival at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this weekend.
Yeah, this one's going to be tricky in that you've got Tottenham Hotspur that aren't very good at home, and Manchester United who are 10th in the away table.
It's better than 17th.
Better than 17th, absolutely. And then you consider the interesting meetings mired in mediocrity that occurred last season. And it seems like 2 or 3 pundits and broadcasters are advertising this one as an accidental thriller. A thriller due to the mistakes that are going to occur between these two.
I don't know about that.
Tell me more.
I don't know about. I mean, I've seen Spurs in a couple of games this season. Admittedly, we've both been away from home, but I don't know. I don't feel like it's mistakes that are causing them to drop these points. I mean, the Chelsea game, for example, which was the last Premier League game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it felt like they were trying to create some sort of stalemate, which never came. And the Spurs fans were very annoyed with the approach in that game, and they felt there was a lot of possession for possession's sake and keeping the ball at the back. And there was even arguments at the end of the game between Vicario and some of the home fans. Mickey van der Ven and Jed Spence walking off the pitch, not really acknowledging the manager, or the fans didn't look great either. I think them two have. It's been reported that they've apologised since for how they reacted too. So there's definitely a moodiness. The only issue is that their last home game came in the week this week in the Champions League against FC Copenhagen. They absolutely blew them away, which isn't a great thing. Yeah.
This is the double-edged sword that comes with European football and Manchester United not being in European football, in that if United were the very next game after that Chelsea result, you might have been feeling a little bit more confident. But I watched the extended highlights of the 4-0 win over Copenhagen, and I'm watching Mickey van der Ven sprint the better part of 60 yards.
Just trip him up. Somebody trip him up. Come on.
We
It's an incredible goal.
From
You're not a fan of that sort
Old
of...
Trafford.
I did that. I'm not going to lie. I watched that and I went, not again. I'm hoping...
I am a fan of Mickey van der Ven. I think he is a good player, to be fair, and I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but just trip him up. Like, come on.
I felt the same way when Son did the goal against Burnley. I went, he's just running in a straight line. Just foul him. No, I'm being tongue-in-cheek there. And I think that 4-0 victory over FC Copenhagen will have done them the world of good. I don't mean that as a compliment. I also think that's probably Xavi Simons' best game in a Spurs shirt this season, which again, annoying.
Not much of a barometer either, to be fair, because he has struggled a bit,
He has struggled a bit. One thing that I've been really intrigued by is he just doesn't seem ready for the physical jump from the Bundesliga into the Premier League. I think
Florian Wirtz, anyone? Similar position? Similar problem?
If you're Casemiro for a very, very long time in La Liga went up against physically smaller attacking midfielders and just let's say, politely had them for dinner. So I'm hoping he can do something similar here. This Tottenham team is unusual in that it feels like Thomas Frank's first job was tighten up the defence, which he's done now. So they're not conceding goals just before half-time in the same way they did last season on Ange Postecoglou. But they have real problems getting the ball forward, particularly in central midfield areas, because they are very reliant on João Palhinha, who is a very good defensive midfielder when it comes to winning the ball, but in terms of passing it forward, not the best. And they're playing Bentancur in there as well, and Bentancur he's had 2 or 3 injuries and just hasn't looked the same since. So they're struggling to get the ball up and down in central areas. Manchester United are, in general, prefer to get the ball out down wide areas. So this could, in theory, be entertaining. But after those 4 matches last season, that's the correct noise.
Yeah, I'm making noises now, Carl. That's normally your job, isn't it? 4 defeats out of 4 games last season against Spurs it is not great. I was going to save this, actually. It's a little bit later, but let's do it now. Lost 5 of the last 6, Andy, against Spurs. The last win against them was October 22, a 2-0 win at Old Trafford. The last time they won at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium still is that 3-0 win October 21 with the pensioner front line of Cavani and Ronaldo. I mean, they're due a result there, United, aren't they, surely?
So the last 2 wins you mentioned, both really notable, good performances. The record against them is horrendous, especially last season. Tottenham, results-wise, are really, really poor, and yet still beat Manchester United 4 times last season.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. It is, because they've finished 17th. They've won 1 home game, but then Forest had only won 1 as well.
True.
And, United
Opening
went into
day,
that.
both of them.
Exactly. The one thing about Tottenham, that there's discontent among the fans, who, as you've touched on. If United can somehow go ahead and that discontent can start to work against them, because even last year in some of the wins, you were hearing the chants, get Levy out, or people pushing for change. Thomas Frank is one of the 6 people Manchester United looked at to replace Erik ten Hag, and United didn't strongly pursue it. But I know there were people within the club. I remember one person saying to me, he has got the personality to manage Manchester United. Well, if you want your team to lose every week at home, then you certainly got the personality for that. I'm a bit nervous, Ian.
Okay.
Salty
Mitten went to nervous Mitten very quickly then, by the way.
But I suppose it's where I feel I am with Manchester United. You don't quite know what you're going to get. If there is an increase in confidence, it's still a fragile one. And are United good enough to go to Tottenham and get a result? And you'll go, okay, here's more evidence that Manchester United are better. I'd feel more confident if United were at home, where they seem to be getting a really good run together. But do you want to play Tottenham at home when they win all their away games?
Yeah. 13 of 15 points so far this season they've taken.
Exactly. And I'm still really scarred by Bilbao. I know we joke about it.
Are we allowed to mention that? I'm sorry.
Well, I just...
You brought it up first, so we can do it now.
United's lack of a plan B really worried me that night. So United had all that possession, and I hope on Saturday, if things are not going well, that Manchester United are more tactically adaptable. It was just a massive defeat, that, and they're enjoying Champions League football and we're not. If that's not reason to be vengeful against Tottenham, given that they're enjoying the fruits of that victory, then nothing is. United should be feeling so vengeful. People like Luke Shaw should be like, I despise what you did to me in Bilbao in May, and just go out and try and smash Tottenham 5-0, and after every game just jump into the away end and take a booking for it. It's worth it.
Andy,
I'm sore about Spurs. Sorry, I'll stop now.
Andy, would you consider a victory here a statement win?
What is a statement win apart from
Laurie?
Apart from United beat Everton?
I looked at that the other
said,
day. It was the 3rd game of Amorim's reign. What was I thinking? What on earth?
Big statement win.
Big statement.
I'm not going. If United beat Tottenham, Carl, I don't just think suddenly Manchester United are all right. I think it's a gradual thing. I remember in '91 when United went from being bad to good, as in 13th in the table to challenging, and there were still setbacks along the way, and there were some statement victories. I remember one at Arsenal, 6-2 in the League Cup, where you're like, whoa, what's going on here? So it's a gradual thing, but it's got to be pointing upwards all the time. If United beat at Tottenham, yeah, it's be a massive win. And where we're going to be in the league table? Above Tottenham.
To mention, Laurie, to mention the game that we can't mention from last May.
Andy keeps bringing up.
Yeah. It was a different approach that day, wasn't it, from Ange Postecoglou? I think, it raised a lot of eyebrows that he was going to concede possession and play in a low block because it's so different to how his style usually is. But that is often Thomas Frank's style, especially going up against some of the top sides in the league. And I would expect them to be similar this weekend, although maybe the reaction of that Chelsea sort of atmosphere, like I said before, puts a little bit more expectation and pressure on them to play a little bit more than they did that day. I mean, I think they only had 3 shots in the entire game.
It was like the lowest
against
XG
Chelsea
they've ever recorded or something.
It was something like that, wasn't it?
3.
Oh, really?
They didn't even have a shot on target, did they? I don't think.
I don't think so. Anyway, it was
bad.
It was low. It was bad. And the
One shot on
record at
target.
home, right? Okay, the record at home is not just from this season; it's a legacy of last season as well. I mean, that win in the week against Copenhagen, as good as it was only their 4th win in the past 20 home games in all competitions at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Thomas Frank has made the worst home start in the league of any Tottenham boss since Andre Villas-Boas, whose time in charge there is not remembered fondly. So there is something that United can deepen there. There's something that United can potentially use, even with that brilliant win that they had in the week in the Champions League. But it's going to be breaking down this low block, which again is a question of how United approach this, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess there's a few things to consider there. Obviously, we're lauding this stadium, which is a fantastic stadium, but ever since they moved in, they have struggled. I know they've had some good moments there, but it's just something to consider when obviously United are in the process of trying to build a new stadium as well. How do you maintain that kind of feeling around it? I was really surprised at seeing the scenes at full time against Chelsea, just because I'd sort of thought Tottenham had started the season really well. And then, as you say,
away from home they had.
Yeah. When you actually look into it, okay, this is a kind of different story at home. And, and so, I mean, Van der Ven and Jed Spence just walking past Thomas Frank, you're thinking, wow, how has it got to that stage already? And he then, in his press conference, said that they'd come to him themselves, that he didn't have to go to them, and they apologised and they talked it through. And he's a very good communicator, isn't he, Thomas Frank? He seems a very likeable guy. So it would be striking if you had 2 players sort of genuinely fall out with him this soon. And obviously he was trying to get them to applaud the fans, which is something that United have, that's been a kind of theme of United's defeats, hasn't it? Are they going and applauding the fans? Who's walking straight off? Obviously Steve McLaren, I remember at one point, was trying to get players to go and applaud fans and not necessarily having the best success with it. So, and I do think there's a place for it. I think, looking at United going and applauding the fans at Anfield felt like validation for all the times they'd had to go and applaud them when they'd been defeated. Amorim doesn't actually stick around for that, really. He kind of gets off pretty quickly. He doesn't sort of, I think he doesn't feel it's his place to go and applaud the fans, which is an interesting point. But yeah, back to Tottenham. I mean, they've got so many players. They've got so many players injured, particularly in the offensive positions. Kulusevski and Maddison, yet they've still got a kind of rotating carousel of players. I don't know who their best lineup is up front, which is maybe something that could cause a bit of an issue for United if they can't really predict. I know that Arne Slot doesn't like it when teams change against them, but Thomas Frank is probably going to maybe switch things up. I don't know, but Colin Moani, who's obviously been linked with United, I think they even looked at him this summer as a potential loan option. Has started the last couple of games at least, even though Richarlison has started the season pretty well. You've got Solanke, who I think is he injured as well.
He is, yeah.
But Kudus has started pretty well. You've got, Odebear, I forgot about him. Brennan Johnson, he actually was the guy that was on the end of Van der Ven's blistering run at Old Trafford that was very similar to his one against Copenhagen. So
he also might have scored a goal in a game that we won't mention.
Did he even touch it though?
No, but
own goal,
fine.
whatever. But was that Luke Shaw in that moment, Andy? In terms of when you're saying, when you're highlighting certain players that might want to take particular vengeance on this one in a football capacity to win the game. Yeah, I've not really said anything there apart from just a few thoughts in my head, but I feel like this is going to be, you're right, Ian, if they can actually go to Tottenham and make the mood tense, I think there's a febrile atmosphere there weirdly that can actually be combustible if they play well to start with.
Yeah, we've had questions on this, Carl, and you've written an article, obviously, as well about the differences in Manchester United's outcomes when they've had more possession or less possession in games. We talked about it a bit on the podcast this week as well. Donal's been in touch to say, only worry is if Thomas Frank decides to play a low block like we think they might. Ange did it in the match that must not be named. Donal's joining in on the game as well. How can United improve at creating good chances against low blocks? What do you think?
I mean, the seasonal trend for 25-26 is when you're up against a low block, you try and score from a set piece. And then when the team opens up a little bit to try and get an equaliser, that's when you start running in and attack the space in behind. This will be an interesting one. I don't necessarily think that Thomas Frank wants to play in a low block. I just think he wants to play in a more... let's say pragmatic or more conservative manner compared to Ange Postecoglou, who was known for a 2-2-6 build-up.
He just has a different way of controlling, a different idea on how to control the game, I think is probably the way to put it. Really.
And I think it's important when we look at possession stats, particularly with Manchester United now, that it appears Amorim has a different way of controlling games compared to 2 or 3 other managers, particularly in the top 6 as well. I think the first goal in this game is going to be really, really important because whoever goes a goal down, the impetus will be on them to score the equaliser, and that's when more spaces will open up on the field. One thing that I didn't like in the Nottingham Forest game that we didn't really talk about was 2 or 3 runs that Callum Hudson-Odoi had on either side of the half where when the game got a little bit stretched, Hudson-Odoi made 2 or 3 runs. You're like, nope, someone needs to foul him. Someone needs to put something in there. I think that happens when you are chasing a result or chasing a goal there. Tottenham centre-backs are very, very good. Christian Romero is a player who was linked to Barcelona multiple times. I know Lionel Messi's a big fan of him. Mickey van der Ven, when his hamstrings are good, is just an incredible cheat code if you are protecting against counter-attacks. But also Spurs have to score, and the impetus will be on Spurs to start well and to try and score well. So I think if United can ride the storm in the first 15 minutes, then it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle there. I think United have quite a few tools for breaking down low blocks. I think when you have a player like Amad Diallo who's good wriggling around with the ball in tight spaces, that gives you a little bit more of an advantage than what you perhaps had last season. I think Matheus Cunha as well is quite good at manoeuvring in tighter spaces. 2, I also think you've got a player like Bruno Fernandes who, when he sees a low block, is like, all right, I'm going to shoot from outside the box and see how you react. So there are methods. There are absolutely methods. The key is to not get into a series of sterile possession where you're the horseshoe problem, where you're just going from wing back to wing back to wing back, which is something that Tottenham Hotspur have done 2 or 3 times this season as well, because they can't really get into the middle. So the more I talk about this, the more I'm unfortunately leaning towards this being an odd-looking draw. But I think if United get the first goal, which at this point in time I'm more confident that they can do this than previously, I think there's the opportunity to get the win here.
Yeah, to put this in a simple way, Andy, United haven't won a game when they've not scored the first goal this season. They've not been able to win a match when they've gone behind. They've come back, obviously, from setbacks. Burnley comes to mind, Liverpool away comes to mind. Even holding on against Brighton and pushing for that 4th comes to mind. But that does show the importance of the first goal to Amorim's approach. And he's spoken in his press conference as well about trying to get the noses in front and control the game, being in the lead. Anfield away, the great example of that.
To worry when United go slowly, start badly, fall behind. The worst example of that, again, was in Bilbao against Tottenham Hotspur, who just could not break down that team. I find that I can make a judgment on Manchester United sort of 10, 15 minutes into a game as to how
Amorim's
the game's
spoken about this. He says he can make a judgment in the first minute. Almost the first thing that they do in the game seems to decide in his mind how it's going to go.
And he was going potty Grimsby, by the way, so in the first minute, just to add to that point.
Yeah, I'm with him, and I'm not a professional football coach. I always remember Frank Stapleton, the old United player, saying similar, 3 or 4 minutes was all it took. Now, I can definitely watch a player, or I can read a writer, and I can tell you within 3 or 4 paragraphs if someone can write or not, or even with a footballer. But when I watch Manchester United,
Fred or bad Fred.
Yeah, when I watch United play, you get a sense of of what is coming, and just got to start well. Don't leave us high and dry, Reds.
Let's talk about Jason Wilcox, Laurie, if we can. He's given an interview to the club's new podcast, Inside Carrington. Like we've mentioned before, and like you said as well, it's good to see people within the club taking interviews, even if it's with internal media, to try and explain a few more things about what's going on, give a bit more insight into some of the aspects that they feel are key and crucial at the moment. Even little things like players arriving at the training ground an hour earlier than usual, enjoying the environment. And it takes me back to something I heard, I think it was Wayne Rooney say earlier on this season, where he talked about the old atmosphere at Carrington, the family that they had, no matter what was going on in the world, no matter what the outside noise was, having this nice little bubble to come into work every day, enjoy each other's company, be an extended family, really. And somehow it's different in these modern terms, I suppose, but somehow the club need to get back to that. And little things like that suggest that people are enjoying being at work again.
Yeah, I mean, that is the idea behind them restructuring the training ground, right? It was one of the first things they wanted to do, and they went and did it, So I think credit to them for, following it through so quickly. I mean, £50 million, a lot of money, and, it's the heart of what the club is about, right? I mean, you can debate maybe whether they could have just totally changed the whole training ground, because it's on a footprint of a certain scale. So you're kind of working with something that was originally built 20 odd years ago. But obviously being there, it feels fresher. It feels a welcoming place to go. And not to say that the old building was absolutely, the wrong kind of environment. I think, you can perhaps make too much of, working conditions, and ultimately it's what happens on, a Saturday or a Monday night on the pitch with the players. But I think certainly that little note was a nice one from Jason Wilcox in terms of, hopefully showing that players are committed. And, we've touched on it before on the podcast, haven't we, Ian? In terms of players going for the ice baths after Anfield and things like that, and just kind of making it so that it's a place that people actually want to go. And obviously the mood is a big factor of that, victories help that, but it should stay consistent. And that's something else that Wilcox touched on, that, we on the outside, we can kind of react maybe, and we can get high and low after defeats and losses. They have to stay steady. I do think it's a natural thing for people, even within the club, probably to be impacted by what happens on the pitch. I think you can't disregard the results, because ultimately that's what will dictate whether this is a success or not. But I think ultimately the mood is certainly something that I think you can manage. And yeah, it was good to see him talk. It was at length, wasn't it? Felt like a nice format actually, with you got Helen Evans, Liam Bradford and Phil Jones. So you've got kind of two journalists there, and then a former player who's obviously still kind of connected. I saw Phil Jones talk at the Training Ground Guru conference that was at Old Trafford actually a few weeks ago. Really interesting in terms of the balance between data and how then that is imparted to players, and in what kind of way and when, and what messages do you need to give. So he's clearly someone that thinks about the game a lot. I think he's doing his coaching badges actually, isn't he, Phil Jones, and maybe even his sporting directorship. So it's interesting that you've got that format, and that I think then probably produces better answers from the person that you're interviewing, in this case Jason Wilcox, because you've got that variety of voices and it's more of a conversation than just a one-on-one interview. So yeah, great. I think that the club are doing this kind of stuff, because just to echo Andy's point, I think it can't be that it's just now particularly a head coach, not even a manager, who is the face and voice of the club. I think it needs to have all these different elements, and okay, in the right way. And I appreciate it's easier to do this after 3 victories and a draw than it is in the midst of defeats, but I don't mind. I quite like that you've got this opportunity now to speak and tell people a little bit more, because he went into some detail on transfers and the way things are working there. So yeah, it was an interesting listen, certainly.
I think one thing that's interesting to me is to look for repeat phrases or repeat topics that all these individuals are talking about. So very, very clear that the Manchester United hierarchy are happy with Matheus Cunha, because they will bring him up repeatedly in conversation, and they will also repeatedly bring him up in conjunction with Eric Cantona.
I don't get it. I really don't get it.
That's fine. And I don't quite get it either.
No.
Cantona is the reason why I support Manchester United, and if Cunha can end up being the reason why the next generation brings in another generation, I would love that. And if you can end up having even 50% of Cantona's career at Manchester United, fantastic. But very
I just
clearly,
feel like he sort of headbutted Milos Kerkez, and then everyone says he's like Cantona, where that was like the most out of character thing he'd done at Wolves, basically. But yeah, I don't know. This is a rabbit hole I don't want to go down.
I think it's really interesting that Wilcox and Barada now brought up Cunha as a Cantona-esque figure, and how Fernandes brings up as having the good arrogance. So it seems that everyone in the hierarchy is very, very happy with Cunha, and everyone wants more Cunha-style figures because of what they're all saying at the same time. I think it's also really interesting that Sir Jim Ratcliffe last year was talking about how they don't necessarily want to buy Mbappe, but it's about trying to find the next Mbappe or trying to build a sustainable or holistic squad method. And now you've got Jason Wilcox in this interview saying it's not about building the Harlem Globetrotters, but looking for clean living individuals. So you're going, okay, so these are the phrases that you're all using when you're sat at the table towards each other as well. And yeah, I totally agree with what Laurie's saying. One thing that, if you watch German football quite a bit, is it's a lot more common in German football for the sporting director to come out and explain things, particularly after transfer windows. So if Wilcox is now at a place where his feet are under the table and he feels a little bit more comfortable explaining his methods, so be it. I hope he continues to do it, even when the team isn't on a 4-game unbeaten run.
I think the reckoner's always in the results, and it's a good time to speak now. I didn't know Jason Wilcox, so when he got the Manchester United job, I did what any journalist should do. I started asking about him, and I know lads very well who've played with him, who've roomed with him, who knew him well, and I was getting back really good reports about him as a person, and then started to speak to him and sort of thought his background is pretty similar age to me, similar sort of background, and
loves Radiohead.
I don't know what his musical tastes are. He's a very, very good Premier League player, Jason Wilcox. You know, he's a title winner, and I quite like the fact that he's very sure of his own opinion. He doesn't go for this sort of group think, Man United were this, were that. I think he's been pleasantly surprised at the size of Man United. I think he feels it's a real honour. I think he's quite emotionally stable, which I like. Deals with the pressure well, good family network around him. He has a very clear plan. I think he's pretty tight with Omar Barada, with Ruben. You know, they're speaking all the time. This is the opposite of, I know, of previous managers who've been briefing against a hierarchy. This is absolutely not happening here. But it's a jigsaw falling into place. It's 15 steps. It's going to take a long time, but we're already into it. And I think the recruitment, and he was a big part of it. It was a big part in Ruben Amorim being appointed, and the players that we've seen so far. And I think he's doing well. I like the fact that you can disagree with him on players, and he's got a slightly Anarakish knowledge of what's out there. You know, if you mention a player, and I know a couple of managers and sports directors who are like this, if you mention Deportivo's left back and they know who they are, or it's thinking, this is someone who's really, really on it. But he's also got a tough job to do. Very, very tough job. Did very well at Manchester City. Is a firm advocate of Manchester City's youth system being a very successful one. You know, they were working on less money than Manchester United. I'm not always comfortable with.
Do you think?
Yeah, I was told that they were working on £23 million a year, and Manchester United was £29 million per year, which surprised me actually. And I think they did things very differently to Manchester United. I thought that Manchester United's youth system was a success. And you can also argue that Manchester City's was a success as well, even though they've done things completely differently. So I think he talks well. I think he's very honest. And there's a bit of the Amorim in there where, you know, you've almost got to watch what you say. So maybe it was the best environment for him to be on a club podcast. But I think it was a good thing. I think when he spoke at the former Association of Former Manchester United Players recently, I thought he came across well. Well, you know, I hope he does really well in his job. You sort of invested in him, but everything's got to be in its right place. And it's going to continue to take time.
Did you mean to do that?
What?
You just did a Radiohead.
Sorry. They're obviously.
Did he actually? I don't know
Everything's in its
Radiohead
right
well
place.
enough. Okay, nice. I mean, one thing, Andy, as well that I've been thinking for a while, and it kind of feeds into the conversation point of there being more people at Manchester United actively speaking and spreading the message. I just think there has to come a point, and I know that the last 12 months and beyond have been tough for people, and I know that the results have not been great, and obviously the changes around the club have been a very difficult dynamic for people to manage, and a lot of difficult decisions have been taken during that time. But surely at some point, people have to start being positive about what United are doing again. It doesn't always have to be, a completely honest and frank conversation about the realities of the situation. Surely at some point, the head coach, technical director of football, players, whoever it is, have to start being positive about what's going on again. I mean, people want to hear it. People want to get behind it. And I know there's obviously a line to tread because people also want the truth and they can't be fooled. They don't want the wool pulled over their eyes. But at some point, someone's got to lift this narrative and this mood because there's so many people who want to bring it down. Surely people within the club want to build this thing up again.
I think United fans are like, bring it on. I think the reaction to Jason Wilcox talking was overwhelmingly positive. I did some talks in the summer. Jason turned up to him. Fair play to him. Didn't need to do that, did he? He didn't need to go out of his way and come to Hoboken, I probably pronounced that wrong, in New Jersey, to just get a deeper understanding of what Manchester United is, what the fan culture is. And he didn't grow up as a Manchester United fan. And I think he feels it's a real honour to be, I think he used the word custodian, and that is accurate as well.
Well, he's been a rival of Manchester United for nearly all his career, basically, working at Manchester City off the field, but on the pitch, Blackburn in title races against United, Leeds United as well. So he's had the complete opposite view of the club in some ways. So
yeah, and that is an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because you'll get people that will say, understandably, United have got their own rich history. Could there not be people in the hierarchy that have got that background rather than from Manchester City? Now, I think Jim Ratcliffe would say, well, Manchester City have been the successful club of the past decade, so having people that have been part of that makes sense. And obviously, the proof is in the pudding. If United are successful, I think we'll all be happy, and then those people will become United people, won't they? Really, I do think there's a balance to be struck between, thinking that everything that City did was fantastic and everything that United did was bad, because I think actually there's a grey area within that, and I think that certainly there's, from my point of view, a loyalty to United just generally, and what, people over years and years have done, and there should be recognition of what's happened in the past. I think that's probably what they're trying to do with the Cantona references and Cunha. I mean, I agree with you, Ian. I don't think it quite fits because it's different eras and, totally different dynamics. But I suppose
totally different personalities. I suppose opposite.
I suppose they're trying to say Maverick, and can he sort of inject that kind of personality into the team? But it needs to ring true as well. It kind of can't just be figurative comparisons for the sake of it to kind of show we know about United's history. But like I say, the ultimately, if they've picked players that then go on and do the business for United, I think everyone will get on board with that. But yeah, it's
they can compare him who they like once they've won 5 Premier League titles or whatever Eric walked away with. Yeah.
It's a big role he's got. Someone has got to be in charge at Carrington. And if you think the head coach is in charge of the actual football, well, who's in charge if a player turns up late or if a player acts up? This was all Ferguson in years gone by, but it's too big a role for one person. And so someone like Jason, who has been a professional and been in the game a long, long time, he knows what good and bad looks like. He's there, he's on the ground, he's putting the hours in, he's everywhere. If you go to an 18s game, he's there. But he's often just by himself, just observing, and I don't mind that either.
It's good.
Sort of
it's good.
Exactly. Getting to grips with, walking around with his gazelles on.
Is that the choice of footwear, is it?
It's just a working class Northern English lad who was a very, very good footballer. And, he used to, I think he used to share digs with David May. I mean, that is a major life challenge.
To do that,
if you can survive that, yeah.
Yeah.
You can survive United.
And then he roomed with James Scowcroft at Leicester City. If you can come through both of them things,
that's another one. Wow, okay,
unscathed. And I think he was a very loyal friend to Brian Deane, you know, the striker.
Yeah.
And I also think Jason is a qualified journalist, or he's certainly had a dabble writing
was a
and doing
columnist,
some
wasn't he,
local
in the
radio.
Lancashire Telegraph, I think.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. So, you know, all he needs to do is get a fanzine together and he's away, isn't he?
It's no wonder you two have a lot in common, Andy, when you were talking about some of his anorak tendencies and now his favour of writing as well.
He sounded a bit of a creep, didn't he?
Stop shoehorning Radiohead.
You're not having that one?
Oh,
okay.
no.
I know
I can't even
I got
join in.
talking to some girls after that gig the other night, and they'd come from Palma de Mallorca to hear Creep, and they didn't
Sorry,
play
Andy,
it.
you just turned Spanish for a moment there.
All right, we'll check.
The mitten
All right.
glitch just happened then.
I know some girls who came from Mallorca, right?
That's better, mate. Yeah, thanks.
They only came to hear Creep, and they didn't play it, and they were absolutely fuming.
Did they not play Creep? Wow.
They're playing a different set each night.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
like, they finished on the first night with Karma
Did they
Police.
feel a bit let down?
Oh, look at you.
Okay, he's just
Karma
Googled
Police
that one, hasn't
was
he?
just wonderful. But they didn't
No
play it last
surprises.
night.
Oh, God.
Massively talented.
Just
Terrible.
fake plastic trees, all of them, aren't
Oh,
they?
that's a
brilliant,
tune
right.
as well.
On
You're
that
a
note,
proper weird fish, you, mate.
I just looked at the top 5 songs on Spotify and worked out a way to get them into the
Weird
conversation.
fish should be in there. It's one of the best songs ever written by a human. You know, one of the best
Here we
ever
go.
moments in my life, Manchester United 2008 became world champions, right? And we're in Yokohama, and I couldn't sleep. I'm jet lagged, and I went for a walk on the docks in Yokohama, Japan the next morning, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. There were only fishermen around, and Weird Fish by Radiohead came on, and I just felt the circle of life had been completed. And I realised that's very personal and a little bit odd as well. But Man United are world champions. This absolute tune has just come on, and a fella caught a massive fish.
Yeah. And Weird Fish seems like a great place to leave it. So, Andy, thank you so much for sharing that moment with us. Carl, Laurie, thank you too as well. Thank you for your company, obviously listening and watching along. Let's hope we've still got smiles on our faces once that Tottenham game is over and done with on Saturday. Let's hope that Manchester United's unbeaten run has continued. But thank you again for listening. Still a few tickets left for London. Go and have a look in the show description if you're interested in getting down. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already. Like the video and also get involved in the comments too. And click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Carl Anker and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X and TikTok. Thanks for watching.